you believe in the supernatural?
Download the Legacy Edition of Spirit Blade, a full cast audio drama, for free at spiritblade.com.
Rejoice, ye penny-pinching nerds, rejoice! For this is a season unbound by our bank accounts, unfettered by fees. A legendary age of liberty. This is the Summer of Free!
Hey guys, Peter Franzen here from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. Welcome back to another installment of our Summer of Free 2020 celebration. This is actually our final installment for the year. For each installment this year, I've been recommending one geek movie and one free print and play game. I'm going to finish out by just increasing the number of those a little bit. Going to give you 3 free geek movie recommendations and a handful, I guess, in the end of tabletop games. First up, Frailty. This one you can watch for free right now over at vudu.com. Years after terrorizing a small Texas community, the God's Hand Killer has returned, leaving in his wake a perplexing trail of fear and death. Convinced that he knows the killer's identity, Fenton Meeks shows up at FBI headquarters intent on putting an end to the murderous rampage. This is one of my favorite supernatural horror movies of all time, and the reason being largely because of how it challenges the audience, how it treats the supernatural. You've got this backstory of these kids raised by their dad. You're going back and forth between the present day and the past, and a lot of it's in the past. You're seeing this father raise his sons, and the father seems to have had some kind of a psychotic breakdown very suddenly, where all of a sudden he is convinced that God has given him the task of killing demons, but the demons look exactly like people and are living normal people lives. And so it's the kids have to figure out what they think of all this and what the effects it has on them as they get older, and it's really, really interesting. And I would just highly recommend it for those that are interested in an experience that will maybe challenge how they feel about a movie at the end of it. I love movies that I'm not sure how I feel about this ending. Is it okay to feel good, or should I feel bad? Or, if you're interested in having that kind of experience, I think this one is worth checking out. Next up is Star Trek Beyond, released in 2016, part of the J.J. Abrams Star Trek film series. After stopping off at Starbase Yorktown, a remote outpost on the fringes of Federation space, the USS Enterprise, halfway into their 5-year mission, is destroyed by an unstoppable wave of unknown aliens. With the crew stranded on an unknown planet and with no apparent means of rescue, they find themselves fighting against a ruthless enemy with a well-earned hatred of the Federation and everything it stands for. Only a rebellious alien warrior can help them reunite and leave the planet to stop this deadly menace from beginning a possible galactic war. What was the something darkness? Star Trek something darkness? I can't remember. If the second one was a little bit too dark for you, a little too serious, then despite the description that I just read for Star Trek Beyond, this one may be more your speed. It certainly has a lot more jokes in it. I kind of commented at the time in my review that it's kind of like a Marvel movie treatment given to Star Trek. And it still has all the action and effects and stuff like that, and the characters that you have come to enjoy from the J.J. Abrams movies, assuming you have come to enjoy them. And so while it is certainly not my favorite of the Abrams Star Trek movies, it's probably one that I would go to before any of the other Star Trek movies that have come out in the past, just because it still has more of that action movie vibe compared to the earlier Star Trek films. So anyway, that is available for free at imdbtv.com. And finally, another one from imdbtv.com is Life. This one is a space horror movie came out in 2017. 6 astronauts aboard the space station study a sample collected from Mars that could provide evidence for extraterrestrial life on the red planet. The crew determines that the sample contains a large single-celled organism, the first example of life beyond Earth. But things aren't always what they seem. As the crew begins to conduct research and their methods end up having unintended consequences, the life form proves more intelligent than anyone ever expected. So this is similar in structure to other space horror movies. It has some creepy body horror type stuff. I mean, it's definitely my kind of movie. I really enjoyed the performances, and it kept me in suspense up until the very end. So, yeah, I would definitely recommend Life. Again, that's free over at imdbtv.com. Now, on to some tabletop gaming recommendations. The main recommendation that I'm finishing out the year with is Dungeon in a Tin. You can get this one over at BoardGameGeek.com. Dungeon in a Tin is a solo or cooperative dungeon hack. Players descend into a dungeon randomly laid out from a stack of tiles, fighting through the orc and goblin hordes to rescue the kidnapped maiden and collect treasure and glory. Each player takes turns to move through the dungeon one tile at a time, laying new tiles as unexplored areas are entered. Every time a player enters a room, special monster dice are rolled to determine the enemy's faced and the potential loot to be found. When a monster attacks, a die is rolled to determine the style of their attack. The player then chooses a card from his hand to counter with, each card being strong against some kinds of attack and weak against others. The ultimate goal of the game is for the players to fight their way to the bottom of the dungeon to rescue the captured maiden and then fight their way out with her. The dungeon will become harder to fight through as the player delves deeper, and then harder still on the way out with a helpless rescuee in tow. This print and play game was an entry in the One Full Sheet Label Design Contest here on Board Game Geek, the description reads, and as such the printed components fit entirely on a single label sheet. A small number of other tokens and blank dice will also be required, which actually there are not. There are workarounds for that. Additionally, as the name hints, once constructed on cardstock, it is possible to fit the game inside an Altoids tin or similar. And for information on how you can play this game without doing the custom dice and stuff like that, there's a review by Marco Omnigamer. If you go to his YouTube channel, Marco Omnigamer, all one word, and just search for Dungeon in a Tin, he's provided a really nice review and overview of the game and how it works. And then finally, to finish out tabletop game recommendations for the summer, I would send you to onepagerules.com. This is a website that has multiple games with free rules and contents needed to play them that are all from what I can tell, they all seem to be skirmish games, tabletop skirmish games between largely 2 players, but they have different themes. They've got a grim, dark, futuristic one, very much in keeping with Warhammer 40k. They've got a fantasy skirmishes and some different options. So there are options to purchase expansions through Patreon as they're being developed, or just like outright purchase them after they're done being developed. So, if you want to avoid any temptation for purchase at all, then you would want to skip this website. But otherwise, if you're content to just have like the skeletal core of the rules and the basics, things that you would need to print out in order to play, then there's several choices for your tabletop skirmishing itches to be scratched over at onepagerules.com. And I want to remind you as we finish out here that all past Summer of Free installments for this year and previous years are archived at summeroffree.com. You can also check out over 30 videos on our Summer of Free playlist at youtube.com/christiangeekcentral. So even as things cool down this year, if the budget is still tight, you can celebrate the Summer of Free with Christian Geek Central all year long. So anyway, that's it. Thank you for watching or listening, as the case may be, to our Summer of Free celebration for 2020. That is all for this year. I hope this has been fun and helpful for you. I'm already interested in finding out what new fun and free things we're going to have to share next year. Right now, I'd like to take some time to write a tune for pre-made rhyme. The lyrics kind of never change, but the melody gets rearranged. I never know what I'll create to say how much I appreciate J.D. Myers, Drew Rubb, Olin D. Branham, Winston Crutchfield, Gabriel Stinson, Brian Franklin, and Lee Bray. Thank you for supporting me and SPP and CGC. And now to all who hear this tune, thank you as well. Please come back soon. Want to hear your name in song? Then check out our page on Patreon. It's Patreon. It's not Patreon. It's Patreon.
Do you believe in the supernatural?
Download the Legacy Edition of Spirit Blade, a full cast audio drama, for free at spiritblade.com.